Hello and welcome to Valley Girls, the bi-weekly podcast exploring everything there is to see, do, try, eat, and experience in New York's Hudson Valley by talking to the makers, the doers, the growers, the creators, and all the unique voices of the Hudson Valley. I'm Jenny Leifer.
And I'm Jennifer Santiago, and together as the Valley Girls, we're telling the Hudson Valley story one episode at a time. We're so happy you're here.
Welcome to another episode of Valley Girls.
An esthetician, a martial arts coach, and a yogi walk into a podcast studio. No, that's just a joke. We don't have a podcast studio.
Seriously, though, we have gathered this eclectic group of experts to discuss a topic that is no laughing matter: self-care for trying times. No matter your political affiliation, ideology, or identity, we think we can all agree things are really tough right now for so many people.
Yeah, we're living in unprecedented times, and it can be really overwhelming. The speed at which news comes at you, being always online, and the stress of all of our tech, the price of eggs, the political polarization, the world literally on fire with climate-related disasters and extreme weather. It's a lot. It's all a lot. So it makes it both more difficult and more important than ever that we take good care of ourselves. And we're talking about self-care, and I don't just mean bubble baths and scented candles, although those things are very nice, and I do like them, just for the record.
Yeah, true self-care, it goes so much beyond that and can mean developing coping skills, broadening your social support networks, developing resilience and self-discipline. To cover all that and more, we are talking with Matt Eiler, the owner of Trinity Martial Arts in East Fishkill, Gwyn Corso, the owner of Denver Skin Therapy, and Jenny Baltazar, MA, an author, coach, and speaker whose expertise includes meditation, yoga, massage therapy, among other things. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Happy to be here.
An honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to start with Gwyn. Hey, girl. Hey.
Hey.
So yes, Jenny did say that Gwyn is the owner of Denver Skin Therapy, as in Denver, Colorado, but she has deep Hudson Valley roots. We graduated from FDR High School together, and Gwyn is a great example of you can take the girl out of New York, but you can't take New York out of the girl. She's tough as nails, and she has lots of great opinions on things that she's not hesitant to share. So I'm so excited to finally get you on an episode of the podcast.
Yay. Thank you so much.
So a lot of things here. So you and I have had a similar journey in that we both worked kind of corporate jobs for decades, and then we both got laid off, and then we were both like, wow, what do we do now? And had a really, really hard time finding our footing in the job market. And so we both kind of went in this entrepreneurial direction that, Jenny and I now are doing this media company, and you said, I'm going to become an esthetician. So leave it to us to start businesses in this economy. But also, you and I have had some really good conversations. So part of what we're talking about today is self-care is more than just skin deep, but it can also be skin deep. And so I am super interested in your experiences as an esthetician and the kinds of conversations that you have with people. So things are tough economically for a lot of people, and the world is literally on fire. So it can kind of seem like, this is sort of a luxury and indulgence. Maybe it even feels selfish for me to go and do something like spending a day at the skin spa. But I think it's very much not an indulgence or a luxury. I think it's a really important part of self-care, especially, I'm not going to name names, but some people on this call are turning 50 this year. So especially as we think about healthy aging. So I want to hear all your thoughts, and I know you've got lots of opinions on this.
Well, thank you. So I think a couple things. Let's talk about skincare as healthcare for just a second. So you're right. A lot of people believe that going to a skin studio, an esthetician, even a dermatologist is something for luxury. But let's break it down a couple ways. The first is that your skin is your body's largest organ. So it's not even about looking good. It's about maintaining healthy skin for overall health. And so that's one piece. The second piece is, even though you and I have been shunned from corporate America, if you will, there's still a professional angle when it comes to skin. So think about, and I mean, it's not even just corporate, it's just being a professional. Professionals prioritize their dental cleanings, their haircuts, the gym, but they still are seeing facials as a luxury. And that's the thing, skin should still be treated like any other health related routine. And then the last one, and probably not only the most relevant to this conversation, but the most important, is that there's a mental health connection when you talk about skin. So, skin issues, acne, wrinkles, rosacea, whatever we're talking about, that impacts confidence. And stress also impacts skin. So, in that respect, self care isn't vanity, it's stress management and your overall well being.
Yeah, amen. I know that there's a, when you see somebody and you just look at them and you're like, she kind of gave up. And I feel that when I look at myself in the mirror some days, like there is a huge connection between looking good and feeling good. And that doesn't mean you have to be, all snatched and professional hair and makeup, but when you're doing the basics, especially, I feel like nothing is more important than skincare for making you look well and healthy. You
Yes.
can tell when someone takes good care of their skin and also eats well, which I do not, because you can see that radiance and kind of the natural glow. And also, good skincare means you don't have to do as much of the other stuff. You don't have to get involved with as much makeup and all this kind of stuff when you've got good, healthy skin. So, yeah, I don't think we can discount the mental health connection between taking good care of yourself and feeling like you look your best and having that kind of confidence when you face the world.
It's funny because right now, as you said, you're going to be, or someone on the call is going to be turning 50. I'm going to be turning 50 in December. And what I really, oh, and there's other people.
Yep.
And I'm actually really excited about it, to be honest with you, because aging is a privilege. It really is. And so, another thing about skincare is our goal isn't to look 20 anymore. So, you always
Mm.
talk to, especially women, you'll be talking to women and they say, God, I would never go back to my 20s. But then at the same time, the industry is telling us to look 20. And so it's this mixed message where no, what we want to do is look our best in every stage. Now, people don't think twice about spending money on corrective procedures. But what they don't do is they don't invest in preventative care, which is why you should be going to your esthetician in the first place. Because the earlier you start, the less extreme intervention you're going to need at the end. So this is why, again, you're trying to get that message out that it's not frivolous. The other problem is in our generation, I'm assuming Gen X and such, people think facial, they think Mary Kay and Avon. So that's what they have in their head, that it's this thing.
Mm.
And it's not anymore. And then another thing is when you get a facial or if you have a quality skincare, which does not need to be complicated, you're preventing future corrective treatments. So invest today so you don't have to do big things tomorrow.
It's very much like going to the dentist, right? Like you're not like,
Yes.
I'm just never going to go to the dentist. I'll wait until half my teeth are falling out. Then I'll go have a super expensive procedure and dentures. You're like, I'm going to go to the dentist twice a year so that she can fix any problems when they're still in the infancy stages. So yeah, that's really important.
Yeah. And two
So
things
true.
that I want to add too, something that you said, Gwen, really struck me. Aging is a privilege, right?
Ah,
We all know this, right? We've all probably been there where we've lost loved ones, we've lost friends, we've lost people our age. It is a privilege that we are aging. And I don't take that for granted any day. And there are ways to support ourselves as we age. And I do agree with you. And I love that you said that. Just because we're focusing on our skin does not mean we're trying to look 20 again.
that's right.
There is a lot to be said about just supporting ourselves as we are, as we age naturally. That doesn't mean we're trying to do anything that goes against nature. It's just supporting it. And the other thing is, I do not get facials nearly as often as I get massages. But when I do, I can say that sure, the massage is a little different when you're focusing on specific muscle groups or specific areas of the body. But that same feeling of relaxation, of what I always say is lightness afterwards, I feel so much lighter after a body treatment. That happens with facials and body treatments just as much as it does for massage for me. I feel like I feel so much better about myself overall, head to toe, even if I had a facial as opposed to a massage. So I think that's really important, and I'm glad you brought those up. Thank you. And Jenny, you and I know each other, speaking of massage therapy, from back in our massage days and our massage world. And you have so many things that you do. And I'm especially interested just at the moment in your background in meditation, which is a practice that I used to do back in the day. And Jen and I have been trying for, I would say, 30 plus years, speaking of aging ourselves, 30 plus years to develop with little success. Somehow I got away from it, and getting back into it has been a challenge. I always do this where I start up again, I start a meditation practice, and I just don't stick with it for whatever reason. And I know there's so many different forms of meditation, but I also saw that you recently started a monthly healing circle. And it's so interesting, the juxtaposition between meditation, which is silent, usually, not all the time, but silent, more solo, inward facing, versus gathering with others in a circle of support. So, what are your thoughts on how both of these sorts of practices are really important?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I think that it's vastly important right now, as Jennifer spoke to the difficult times that we're in. And more than ever, we need each other. We need connection, we need community. And no matter how much we do on our own and develop ourselves, and like you said, the consistency, like keeping a pattern of being able to meditate every day, which even just the effort to do it is a beautiful thing, that you want that to be part of your life. Never minimize the little bits that you give yourself across time. I think that's really important. And coming together as a community. And I wanted to offer a space where people could really be in that. I feel like we don't have enough of that in life in general anymore. I mean, more and more we're working in isolation. We're working on our own self-care. We're going to get one-on-one services. We're working from home even, where we don't interact with a lot of other people. And I just feel honestly that whether it's in person or online, that we need more community. We need more opportunities for self-care. I also call soul care, our whole self-care, really
I love that.
at body, mind, spirit, and that it's not selfish, that it's self-full, and it's a way of really looking at our whole system, our whole sense of being, and that there's not necessarily something that we need to do, that it's more about being. It's more about being all of ourselves and discovering more about who we are, our strengths, our passions, our purpose, and uncovering all of those layers that, are the hard times, the good times, the joys, the challenges that we have, and being more of who we are. And so if we can create more spaces where people can arrive and be truly who they are, that are safe and comforting and supportive healing spaces, that it gives more opportunity for people to uncover those parts of themselves.
So true. So true. And, I did one of your workshops and it was so beautiful. And it really is, there's something about gathering with other people in that sense of community. And it's interesting. We just had an episode where we were talking about resilience during difficult times. And the topic that came up was about community and turning to community in times like this, where it seems like it's out there in society and community that all the strife is going on. But really, we need to turn towards each other in times like this more than ever. And for anyone who listens to the podcast for any length of time, you hear my word connection all the time. That is the biggest word for me. So connection for me is so vitally important to our mental and our physical health. So I love the work that you do, and you do beyond just meditation. I was bringing this up, but you do coaching and you do workshops, and you have a background in psychology and of course massage therapy. So I love how you tie this in, and you do one-on-one coaching as well.
Yes, because I think that's still really important, for people to have that personal space to develop themselves, develop resilience, and sometimes most of us, we need that as well. It's kind of not an or, it's an and, to be able to have the one-on-one to offer that level of support where people really get to feel that sense of freedom and being fully who they are, and then to also gather as a group.
Yeah, yeah. We actually had one other panel member who sadly couldn't be here with us this morning because she was sick, but we had a therapist as well. But it's the work that you're doing is very similar in that way, where we all hear self-care, we hear mental health crisis, and we immediately think of going to therapy. And that is a big piece to it. I'm a big proponent of therapy for pretty much everybody, whether you feel like you need it or not. Just like you go to the doctor and have an annual physical, it's so important to check in with a mental health professional on a regular basis as well, more than once a year, preferably. But, the work that you do is pulling in so many different aspects. And I think that's so beautiful. And also the other piece with community and connection is, as I mentioned in the last episode, if this is not a perfect example of this, we all went through such isolation during COVID, during the pandemic. And some people thrived on it. Introverts, they thought it was the best thing in the world because they never had to leave the house, right? But then speaking for my own family, I have a family member who is extremely introverted, has social anxiety, and thought it was the best thing in the world. But it was so interesting seeing how that isolation affected their mental health over the year or two, and then trying to acclimate back into regular life out there in the world and in society. And so many people, not just introverts, had such a difficult time reacclimating in that type of situation. At the same time, we all really needed that. So, I think that there were some definite benefits of slowing down, and the rat race kind of calmed down a little bit during the pandemic, which was not a bad thing. We really did enjoy that slowing down and the family being together all the time. But without that sense of connection to other people outside of your little microcosm, it really had such an impact on people's mental health. I'm sure you saw that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm as you're speaking, I'm thinking of kids
Yeah.
too, who are in these really subtle stages of development and throughout the pandemic and the impact that it's played on them. I've really seen that. I do have teen and young adult clients who are children of the pandemic who have lived through these years and the impact that it's made on them. And just to be able to develop that sense of, it's almost like labeling yourself as an introvert, like you are an introvert, but also we want people to be able to be part of the world and to not identify solely with these terms, because I think it's really important to say, like, okay, it's okay to be an introvert. However, that you also have the potential to do these other things if you want to. So not to limit yourself and the possibilities for yourself because of that. But I think some of the kids during this time, just it was a real struggle for them, for
Yeah.
their adolescence, some big milestones, coming of age things that they didn't get to experience. And that it gives some extra hurdles for them to like propel themselves out into the world and become the people that they want to be. And so I think it's really important to just be aware and witness that as adults out in the world, to say, like, well, look what the kids have really had to endure. Even my youngest, I mean, she's 8 now. When I think of her experience with nursery school and preschool and that kind of thing, was online. I mean, she had literal classes online, which she didn't really participate in, but it has affected her capacity for certain things and her development. And I have to be very mindful to create even more kind of social opportunities for her, because she
Hmm.
missed some of those like really essential things.
Yeah. Critical.
Yeah,
Sure.
critical.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll say about this is when we're talking about kids, one thing that I have learned over the last few years for sure is the importance of modeling self-care for our children. So if we want to encourage our kids, our other family members, our parents, elderly parents, if we really want to encourage other people to take care of themselves in any way that is good for them, we have to start with ourselves. Right. So, how are we going to tell other people it's really important to get that self-care when we ourselves are not taking care of ourselves? So, I think modeling self-care in whatever form is really important for our kids as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
One
absolutely.
thing that I wanted to follow up on is that being an introvert is not the same thing as being a misanthrope. So introversion means, you you need a lot more solo time to recharge and your energy is more easily drained in social situations, but it doesn't mean introverts don't crave that connection. And I think
Right.
that's something that people often misunderstand about introversion and extroversion. I always say that I am an ambivert. I am super extroverted until I am not. All of a sudden my battery goes from like 100 to 0 and I'm like, I'm done. I'm done now. So that's something, that's just something to know about yourself. That's just an important thing to know about how you get your energy and whether social connections are energizing or draining for you and how to balance that, because you still need the connections.
Absolutely. Even if you then need the time to energize by having
Yeah.
some time to yourself, you still need that connection. I agree. Yeah.
Yep. Jenny Baltazar, you said something so interesting. So Jenny Leifer and I, this is like a running joke that we have read so many things about the benefits of meditation. We are all in on meditation and brain changes in meditators and all of the health benefits of it, but we don't do it. And every time we're super stressed, we'll be texting each other and we're like, you know what we should do? We should meditate. Okay, it's a pact. We're going to start meditating. And we don't do it. But one time, a long time ago, I took a yoga class and the instructor said, there's no such thing as being good at yoga. And I feel like that's really important for meditation too. There's no such thing as being good at meditation. There's trying, right? And you said something about, it's just that you're making the effort daily. And I feel like that's super worth recognizing, that you're just trying to do it. You're just prioritizing that. Even if you're saying, I'm going to set aside 5 minutes a day and I'm not going to, sit cross-legged on the floor on my zafu. I'm just going to sit here on the couch. I'm going to close my eyes and I'm just going to concentrate on my breath for 5 minutes. You're still getting benefits from that. It's still worth making the effort, and it signals to your brain that you are worth it. Whether it's taking 5 minutes to meditate or whether it's saying, this is a stretch for me financially, but once a month, I'm going to go to this skin spa and I'm going to get this treatment. Whatever it is, it's signaling to yourself that you are worth the time and the effort. And I feel like we often, I'm going to come back to a question later on caretaking, but I feel like we often put ourselves last because we're the one person that we can afford to let down. We have to do everything for everybody else in our lives, but we can go back on our promises to ourselves. So I love that perspective that you said, just making the effort daily. And that's a really important thing to train yourself, that like, I am worth this. I am worth trying to do this. And I don't have to be good at it. I just have to be making an effort.
Absolutely. Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
I'm just feeling that absolutely, like if you and Jenny were to say, like, we're going to be people who meditate, that's the first step. You can just decide that. You don't have to wait for someone to give you permission, or you don't have, like you said, you don't have to be a yogi or someone who has had a lot of training. You can just say, I'm going to be someone who meditates. And then that can be anything. It can be stepping outside. It could be feeling the sun on your face. It can be listening to music that helps you to just feel calm. It can be any variation on that theme. It doesn't have to look a certain way. So giving yourself the grace that, like, that's enough, that's okay, and that can expand. You'll start to see the benefits of it, and then you'll be like, oh, I want to do more of this. So
that's true. You don't have to be a Tibetan monk. Meditation doesn't
Right.
have to look like one thing. I like to make a Zen garden by combing my cats and watching the patterns of lines in their fur. And I know that sounds funny and silly, but that can count too.
That is meditation. And I think that there's so many different forms, and people just think, like you said, about sitting there on a pillow, cross-legged, saying Om to yourself. It doesn't have to look like any specific thing. But when we think about what meditation is and does, it's all about focused attention, right? So it's not about pushing our thoughts out of our head or anything else like that. It's about focused attention and the benefits of that. And Jenny, this is where I think that what you're saying makes so much sense to me. If we're saying, I'm going to at least make an attempt at it, that is focusing my attention on attempting it. That in and of itself is a meditation. So the benefits are still there. And I really appreciate that perspective. That's great. Thank you.
Intention on bringing attention.
Yes, intention and attention. Right. Exactly.
Together, that combination is really all it takes. It's very simple.
Yeah.
So this sounds like a lot like we're talking about focus and discipline. And so in some ways, talking about martial arts now can almost seem like the opposite of what we're talking about, of like yogi, new agey, touchy-feely meditation. But Matt Eiler is a martial arts instructor. So we had some preliminary conversations about martial arts and their benefits for mental health. So I don't know what you think of when you think of martial arts, but I absolutely think of discipline and focus. And so I am super interested in all of your thoughts, Matt, on what martial arts has to teach us about building resilience and the benefits that you've seen for yourself and for all the people you teach on mental health.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because when you talk about martial arts, there's such a wide variety of what is out there. The school that I own is actually called Trinity Martial Arts, and we call it Trinity because there's different aspects, right? There's the sport, the competitiveness, there's the art, like the beautiful movements and breathing, there's the self-defense. Some of my students, they do it for physical fitness. Some of my students, they do it for the community that you were talking about before. Everybody does martial arts for different reasons, and there's different styles of martial arts. You'll find some martial arts that are very competition based, sport based. You'll find some that are very, very aggressive and practical and realistic and very driven on what is the best way to counter certain techniques and practices. And then you'll find martial arts that are just more holistic and about breathing and centering yourself and discipline. And my studio, we really try to focus on being well rounded in all those things. So when you think about self-care and martial arts, one of the things that I always tell my students to think about is what is their goal that they're trying to achieve. We have students that come, a lot of my students are younger and their parents sign them up for martial arts because they need discipline and focus. I have a lot of students with different learning disabilities, students that are on the spectrum. I was a formal special education teacher before we opened up my studio. So we get people from all walks of life. And then I have adults with hip injuries and knee injuries and adults that are overweight and they're looking to improve their physical health. So there's really all these different reasons. I tell my students to really think about what their goals are. And for a lot of them, like you said, that discipline and structure and focus is a big part of it. But I think it really goes back to what is your goal? What is you're trying to achieve? Because when you're talking about taking care of yourself, we really crave structure and we crave self-improvement and a desire to achieve something. Even if you're a more mellow person, it feels good to accomplish things. And so if we don't ever evaluate what our goals are, then we don't have that drive. And that's really important. And so it's like I said, we start every class and we talk about our goals. And some of our goals for my little 5-year-olds is, hey, can you stay still for 30 seconds without talking? Some of my students, their goal is, hey, can you throw your kick 2 inches higher than you did last time? And so that kind of creating a space where you're able to personally achieve what you're setting out to do can be really positive for mental health and self-care and improve that discipline, focus, and just that desire to grow and learn.
That is such a good point. You just said it feels good to accomplish things. So the first podcaster that ever made me love podcasting is Gretchen Rubin, and she's an author. Her podcast is Happier with Gretchen Rubin. And so she studies the science of happiness and what makes us happier. And one of the things she talks about all the time is living in an atmosphere of growth. And how no matter where you are, no matter where you're trying to go, it's really important to your fulfillment and your happiness and your sense of self that you are accomplishing something. You feel like you are growing in some way. So that's a great point that whatever it's, can you stay still for 35 seconds today? Whatever it is, you're building on your achievements and you are seeing growth. And that's so important. And that cannot be overlooked.
Yeah, it's important to really explain to people that the growth that you experience is going to be different. Like, for example, we host an annual martial arts tournament we have coming up this weekend. And one thing I don't like to say to my kids is I don't like to say winning doesn't matter because everybody's going to a tournament trying to win. So I don't want to undermine that goal. Everybody wants to win. No one goes saying they're going to lose, but no one wants to lose, I should say. But when you go to that tournament, I have students that have massive anxiety. And so their goal is not to get a gold medal. Their goal is to get through their routine without freaking out and crying. I have students that have low muscle tone. And so their goal is not to get a gold medal. Their goal is we have board breaking to break all their boards. And I think not just for kids, but in the modern age where we are constantly bombarded by social media and no one posts their failures on Facebook and Instagram. We all post our successes. And so it's very easy to see the fancy car and the shiny trophy and that type of thing and think, wow, that's what my goal has to be. And that's just not true. And so we really put a focus on what is your personal achievement, and that is valuable to you, then that is valuable in general. And that's okay.
It's so great. My daughter has anxiety, and we had her in Taekwondo for years. And the confidence that it helped build for her was tremendous. It was really tremendous. And I have been involved in martial arts in other ways. And actually, my massage training, we actually had a PE class in my massage school, and it was Tai Chi. We had to do Tai Chi as part of our program. And obviously, a very different style than the more of the outward type martial arts. But it is so incredible how it moves your energy and how it changes your energy and whatever your goals are. And I agree with that whole concept of having a goal to work towards something. And yes, Gretchen Rubin is definitely on mark with that. And I feel for myself, I have physical limitations, I have chronic health issues and chronic pain issues. And there are those days where I don't feel like doing anything but bed rotting or couch rotting. And I let myself do it in the name of self-care. And you know what? I always feel worse. I always feel worse. There are some days where you really do just have to let yourself at least have a certain amount of time to just chill and not do anything. But the days that I don't want to, but I push myself anyway, even if all it is getting up, like Jenny, you said earlier about going outside and just feeling the sunshine on your face, walk around the block, do one quick errand where you don't even have to get out of the car, whatever it is, but accomplish at least one thing. And I know to people who are kind of in the rat race of go, 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 and they feel very efficient and they feel very productive, it might sound like completely foreign. But when you are stuck in, even if it's a situational depression where you just, well, I don't have the energy, or I don't have the movement today, I just can't do it. Pick one thing to accomplish for that day. Check one thing off of your to-do list, mental or otherwise. And it is such a huge boost to your, not only your confidence, but to your mental health. It's just wonderful. So I love that idea of having a goal to accomplish something.
Yeah,
That's
and
so important.
I have students that they do martial arts for 6 months, a year, and they say, you know what, I don't want to do it anymore. We're very fortunate at our school. We have a really good program. A lot of people, some of my students have stuck with me for years, decades. But you know, that does happen where people come to me and say, hey, I don't like this, I don't want to do this. And I tell them, especially the kids, like, that's fine. You don't have to. Martial arts is not going to be for everyone. I'm not looking to trap anyone or stick you where you don't want to be. But I always ask them, what are you going to do now? Because if you're not going to do martial arts, are you going to do
Mhm.
football? Are you going to do dance? Because it's so important to have something that you are doing. So if martial arts isn't for you, that's totally fine. I want to support you and help you reach your goals, even if that's not with me. But occasionally I do get, especially kids who, well, I'm not going to do martial arts. What do you want to do? I want to play Fortnite. And that's great.
Mm.
It's good to have
Mhm.
outlets. I'm not condemning that. I love video games. But you know, are you productive? Are you actively looking to achieve something? You need to have something on your path that you're heading towards. That's important.
Yeah,
And
probably not the same set of benefits from Fortnite as from doing something physical. But
I don't know, Jen, you should talk to Andrew, my stepson, about that. He might have other thoughts
I
about
was gonna
that.
say you're gonna get that one angry commenter, you know, saying like,
That would be
you
my
have no
Andrew.
idea how it's changed my life.
And he's an active
that's
kid, but he
valid
loves his
too.
Fortnite.
I am especially interested, though, Matt, in your background as a special education teacher and your work at the studio with neurodivergent kids. Okay, so anxiety is a whole, we could do a whole episode, we could do a whole other show, like a new podcast on anxiety. But just interested in some of the experiences that you've seen in ways that it has transformed kids' experiences coming and working with you on martial arts stuff in the studio, especially kids who are on the spectrum or ADHD or other neurodivergent conditions.
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to say that something I say to my students all the time, we always end our classes with a positive character development lesson. We call it our message of the week. And something I'm constantly saying to my students is if I'm preaching to you on self-discipline, that's because it's something that I need as well. I have been in and out of therapy. I'm on medication for anxiety and depression. So this is all stuff that's very close to me. There's no shame in it. But when you have students with those struggles, something that I found martial arts offers that is very, very important is it offers structure. And even if you are a carefree spirit, go with the wind type person, we desire structure in a lot of ways. I mean, just look at the way our world is set up. We have Monday through Friday as work days for most people. We have weekends. There's a common acceptance of you work from 9 to 5, and then the evenings are free time. We have lunch, dinner, breakfast at certain times of the day, right? Our life is designed around a lot of structure. And something that can help students when they are neurodivergent or on the spectrum or struggle with focus is knowing what the routine is and what is expected of them actually helps them be more successful. So, for example, I have a lot of students who sign up for martial arts because they have trouble focusing, ADHD. They are looking for alternatives to medication. There's nothing wrong with medication, but some of them don't want it. And coming in and understanding that in this setting, in the martial arts studio, there is an expectation to stand still. We do this warm up and we do this drill, and you're learning this. We call it forms, which are like our patterns of movements. And we have this piece of our curriculum that is really, really beneficial to students. And when they learn how to operate in that structure, then we can work on bridging out and saying, okay, well, we are focusing on this kicking drill for the next 10 minutes. But how does the skills that you're learning here apply to sitting at your desk in school for 10 minutes? Well, we're working on standing still. We're working on eye focus on the instructor. We're working on supporting our fellow students and encouraging them. And all those things apply to the classroom. And then when you get older, all those things apply to your workforce. So creating that environment of structure really, really helps people, especially those with learning disabilities and neurodivergent and on the spectrum, to thrive not only in the martial arts studio, but outside of the martial arts studio. And last thing I'll say about that is I always tell people we teach martial arts, but martial arts is the lens through which we teach something better than that, right?
Mm.
And I find myself all the time partnering with dance studios. And one of my family's good friends is there's a lady in Poughkeepsie, Liz. She has a place called Mindful Yoga. We're constantly partnering with her just because so many of our goals are the same. And we do it through different avenues. We do it through yoga, we do it through martial arts, we do it through dance or art or sports, but we're all trying to achieve those same things with those students who have those needs.
That is so amazing. I just love that. And another thing, it might be the avenue for it. It might be just that thing that gets you to your goals. There is also something to be said, and I completely realize what a hypocrite I'm being saying this about exercise because just that physical activity is so important for our mental health. And I feel that. And again, just like meditation, something that I'm really trying to, even if I can't have traditional exercise in my life because of my physical limitations, that doesn't mean that I can't have some form of movement and activity. And I know 100% the days, like I was saying, that I just really feel like I just can't get out of bed or I'm having a flare, can't get off the couch. If I just force myself to move even just the slightest bit throughout the day here and there, what a difference it makes. And if you continually do that, have a consistent routine structure, again, like you're talking about, having that structure of having something set up. I find for myself, I'm not really a gym person. I've never, even before all my stuff, my health stuff, I've never really been a big gym person. But the one time that I was very good and consistent is when I was working with a trainer because I had an appointment and it was a structure and I was responsible for something. And having that, it got me to do it. So the structure is really important, but then the post exercise, the benefits that I would feel, it's tremendous. So, yes, it's an avenue, right? But it is also really important to stay active for your mental
Yeah, and
health.
there's that chemical aspect of building exercise and then it creates endorphins, and there's absolutely that. But I like what you said about a trainer because one of the things that's the best, in my opinion, about owning a martial arts studio is the community that we create. And when you say to your friend Sally, "Hey, I'm going to karate tomorrow. Am I going to see you there?" "Yeah, I'm going to see you there." And then you hold each other accountable and then you both come together.
Yes.
And we have a very positive environment at our studio. It's not like if you've ever seen Cobra Kai, like I'm not sitting there yelling at my students all the time, but my job is to motivate and encourage them and teach them. And so there are times when I say, "Hey, we're doing this drill. Let's go. Let's kick for the next 5 minutes nonstop. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Let's go, let's go, let's go." And you're sitting there sweating and training with other people. It creates this bond of like, hey, I don't want to phrase this negatively, but we're miserable together. We got
Mm.
this. And it pushes each other. And then you also have that benefit of the accountability and the endorphins and this community where you're all in this together trying to achieve these common goals. Like you said, it's really important in that aspect as well.
Yeah, I see it with team sports. When my
Sure.
kids were growing up in team sports, same thing. Yeah, so
So
important.
accountability is a huge theme. And I think this takes us back to why, when we have too many things on our plate, ourselves are the people that we feel like, well, that's the one person I can drop my commitments to. And speaking of hypocrisy, I get on Jenny's case about this all the time because she does so much caretaking despite her own health issues. So I know all of us on this call are parents. And then Jenny Leifer and I have also recently been in situations where we're doing very much that sandwich generation thing where we're still taking care of our kiddos and now we're taking care of older relatives. So I am curious from everybody's perspective, anybody can chime in here too. And then Jenny Baltazar, just from the counseling perspective, when you do your one-on-one sessions, if there's anything you've found that's really good advice, how do we prioritize taking care of ourselves in whatever way that looks for us when we are also doing so much caretaking for other people? And how do we balance it? Has anybody here found anything that works? Because I need all the strategies.
I think that one thing, like I found in our martial arts studio, is our students, I would say about 2/3 of them are under the age of 16, but we have a very vibrant adult program. And with the exception of one or two people, most of the adults in my program are parents and they only joined martial arts after their kids did it. And I just had a conversation recently with a woman who we have this tournament coming up on Saturday. She's in her 50s. She's not superstar, kicking above her head, doing backflips, that type of thing, but she wants to do the tournament. And she said, the reason I want to do the tournament is because I want to be a good example for my son, who's like 12. And so I think that, I don't know, we might have mentioned this before the call, or maybe it was during the call, I don't recall, but taking care of yourself, whether it's through physical exercise or meditation or skincare, like we've all talked about here today, your kids are watching that and they see how you talk to yourself. One of the things I've found is that I have a very negative mindset. And so I'll sit there and I'll make a mistake. Oh my gosh, you're such an idiot. And my daughter goes to me, she's like, don't call yourself that. I'm like, oh no.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, she sees that, she watches that. And so with martial arts, all these parents that are getting out there and sweating and kicking and working on their goals, their kids see that as well. So I wouldn't see self-care as taking away from your kids, but as an avenue to teach them and role model for them something that they should do as they get older and when they have their own kids as well.
And also to add on that, Jen and I always talk about this analogy of put your oxygen mask on first. So what I mean by that is we have all been on flights where they say they give us the spiel about an oxygen mask may fall from the ceiling and all of this. Place your oxygen mask on before helping others. And while that is a completely different situation, that is such a great analogy. If you're passing out because you're not getting enough oxygen, how do you expect to be able to help your kid who's sitting next to you who needs help with their oxygen mask?
But I understand that, but I still wouldn't. If I'm on a plane with my kid and the oxygen masks fall down, I'm making sure his is on his face first. I still wouldn't. I don't know how to
Yeah.
do
No, I
that.
get
don't know
it.
how
And
to override that part of my like lizard brain, my evolutionary
Mhm.
brain that's
it's
like
so true.
you
But I
take
think you
care of your offspring.
underestimate how quickly you'll pass out. Like that's the analogy is
Yeah, I'm sure you're right.
yeah,
Yeah,
like the
now we're getting
analogy
down
is
to the
like
science of it.
help someone else because if you don't help yourself first, you will pass out. And we all
It's
think,
true.
well, I'm fine. I'm fine. I can push myself. I can go another day, another week. I can go another
This
month
is what I do.
without this routine. And then before you know it, you're passed out and you're helping no one. And so I think it's important to remember that you might think you're okay, but a lot of times we're not, or we might think we're okay, but we're slowly stretching ourselves thinner and thinner. And so,
Yep,
you know,
that's the caregiver burnout. That's
yeah,
so true.
you think you're helping other people, but really the quality of your for me it's instruction in martial arts, right? The quality of
Mhm.
the instruction is slipping and slipping, and you don't even realize it until it's too late.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think, well, to that point, so two things. This is kind of what everyone's been saying, but taking care of yourself isn't taking away from others. It's making sure you have the energy to keep showing up, right? Two things. One, I think we need to start reframing self-care as non-negotiable. So if you're not skipping brushing your teeth, why would you skip on any of the things that we talked about today? Mental health, physical health, skin health, any of those. The other thing is and this has kind of been something we've talked about throughout the hour, but you want to make it ridiculously simple. So, Jenny, you were talking about not being able to get out of bed at some point, but you know that feeling of just being able to just wash your face, just it changes things. Another thing is to stack your habits. I think that's really important. So, as you are taking care of people in your life, do something at that same time. If you're at a doctor's appointment, there's no shame in applying skincare in the lobby. You know what I mean? So trying to take those little moments of time that you aren't caregiving and doing something for yourself. And then always have backups too. So, for example, have stuff in your car, or if you're on your way to a therapy session, have something in your purse, things like that. Just keep things simple and then reframing as non negotiable. I think those are the two keys.
Yeah, I agree with that completely about the non-negotiable piece. And I also want to just mention, and as we've done with other episodes we've had about things, not the same thing, but something similar, is I do want to acknowledge that there is some level of privilege to be able to afford to go get a facial, to be able to afford martial arts classes, be able to afford coaching and counseling if the insurance isn't covering it. And that is a real thing. That is a very real thing for many people. And especially when we're talking about make it a regular routine. Well, some people just can't do that. And there are so many ways of self-care that don't have to cost you anything at all. And so I just want to just acknowledge that for a moment, that while we're talking about things that may cost money, there are plenty of ways to perform self-care that can also be non-negotiable. Like you said, washing your face, whatever it is, just something that is for you and only for you, that it does not have to mean a cost for a service or something like that. So just wanted
And
to
I
bring that
love,
up.
Gwen, I love your point about squeezing it in when you have those little bits of time. If you're going to sit in the car for 10 minutes in the carpool line waiting for your kid to come out of school anyway, put on some nail oil, get a cheap sunscreen
Mm-hmm.
lotion from the dollar store and give yourself a hand massage while you're sitting there. Go to the dollar store and get a crossword puzzle book, and you're like, that this is my time. I have this 10 minutes in the carpool line every day when I'm just sitting here in park. I'm going to do this crossword puzzle because I know that makes my brain feel better. So you can steal those little moments. It doesn't have to be something where you're like taking an hour out to go and have some appointment. You can just use the downtime or those like little interstitial moments between doing stuff for somebody else to be like, well, this is my moment right here. That's a really good point to think about.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's so important to make sure that you're not getting your information, especially in my line of work, from social media. Because if you're watching influencers, which we call skinfluencers, they're showing
Love
you
it.
12-step products, right? Like they're showing all of these things. They're like wrapping their face. And a lot of that is just to sell more product. But honestly, it's cleanse your face, moisturize it, and sunscreen. That's it. And so, like you said, Jenny, if you can't afford to go to an esthetician, then just doing the very, very basics, doing something is so much more important than doing nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I have to remind myself of all the time. Doing something is still better than doing nothing. And yeah, that is definitely key. And again, the caretaking piece, if we want to be there for other people, having those moments for ourselves is so important. And I would be remiss if I didn't also, we were talking about facials and all of this, but massage therapy is another one where I can't say enough about, the benefits of massage for self-care. I actually, one of the things that I have committed to myself is having either a membership somewhere or buying a series if I can. Whenever I get gifts, if I get gift money, anything like that, it goes right into a little self-care fund for myself. And so now I am absolutely committed to having a series of massages prepaid so that I don't have the excuse, oh, I really shouldn't spend the money this week, or I really don't have the time this week. Nope, I'm taking the time. It's prepaid, and usually you get a discount if you prepay. But massage therapy, I just cannot say enough about the benefits of massage. And again, if you really truly cannot, whether it is a financial issue or a body issue and you just are uncomfortable with massage therapy, I have taught classes on self massage for self care. I was a hospice massage therapist and hospice nurse for many years. And one of the classes that I taught was for grieving. And Jenny can also speak to, she does a lot of work with grief and loss, but for our grieving family members, how to perform self-care. And one of the pieces of the workshop was my class on self-massage. So there are ways, there are always excuses, but there are also ways to take care of yourself for sure. Yeah.
I have so much to add to
Yes,
all
please.
that you're sharing. It's just wonderful. So many wonderful voices, and I love to hear all of your ideas. And I would say, like, the first thing I want to speak to is the follow through. Right, we were getting back to that, and the prevention of things. And I think it's all combined with taking care of our future self. If we think about, well, even in 5 minutes, Matt saying you won't be able to breathe if you don't have the oxygen. Even with things like, I might have a really rough morning if I don't do this thing right now. So there's certain things. I do a lot of this work with my clients, is talking through what's your evening routine so your morning routine can feel really smooth, right? So you can feel like there's a little bit more ease in your day. Or it might be like, I'll be in a lot of pain tomorrow if I don't do a little bit more movement this evening, before I go to bed. Or maybe it's that time outside, or a time with a loved one that's important. One of my favorite kinds of movement is dancing in my home. Doesn't cost a thing, and it doesn't have to look pretty. It's just literally just letting yourself be in music, whether it's in the privacy of your shower or with your family. I think it's a great way to just get into our bodies when we're so much in our heads. The other thing I would say too is another concept I love is move enough to rest, and then rest enough to move. So when you're in doubt of, have I done enough today? And you might be shaming yourself or feeling like I've had my own anxiety, depression as well. I get it. And I know how hard some days can be, living with grief, living with all kinds of life challenges day to day. And so when I feel like I've spent a lot of time in bed, or I've spent a lot of time not moving, I'm like, okay, like I need to get myself just a little micro step today. What can that be? Even if it's doing a normal task in a very slow way, and that's okay. Washing your face is a beautiful one, because you're also caring for your skin, doing something that feels therapeutic and supportive to yourself. And you're your best own inner healer, I believe. And so if you can really reflect on that, and just, it doesn't have to be a big thing. So I love massaging your feet, like this time of year when your feet are so dry, just a simple thing like putting a little bit of cream on your feet before you go to bed,
Or essential oils, right? The thing you're
essential
getting
oils.
double
Yeah.
benefit.
It's another thing that's just wonderful. Like you can get very simple things, or something, an herbal tea, giving yourself a cup of herbal tea that smells really good, and how that makes you feel better influences your mental well-being, right? So there are a lot of things out there that we can do that are very simple and don't cost a lot of money, that help set ourselves up, our future self. So not only like modeling for our kids the ability to navigate difficult emotional things, being honest about it with them, really transparent about, I'm going through a hard thing, and giving them the words like, I'm like feeling really angry right now. Or I think that those are beneficial for them to learn that it's okay to have all those thoughts and feelings. And also yourself is equally as important. And so my future self will do better tomorrow if I mindfully choose maybe an apple instead of this piece of cake or something like that, with a gentleness that it's also okay if you choose the cake today. And then tomorrow you might choose the apple instead. So I think that would be my thought, Jen, going back to your original question, is that kind of like, well, how will my future self benefit if I actually do this right now? Like, what would that be? How could I have a better day in an hour or 5 hours or 10 days from now if I thoughtfully do this thing right now for myself?
Yeah, and getting back to Jen's question about caretaking, taking care of other people, it's so important that future self. If you're taking care of your future self, you will be there. It should be for you. It can be and should be for you. But in addition, to be expected to be able to take care of other people, you need to be able to take care of your future self too. Yeah, I
So
love that.
I swear I'm not on Gretchen Rubin's payroll, but what you said, Jenny Baltazar, about like choose the apple instead of the piece of cake or whatever, one of the things that she always talks about is treat yourself like a toddler. And so when you're having those bad moments, or you're struggling with anxiety, or you just feel whiny and you're like, but I want a piece of cake, think about parenting yourself. Think about how you would speak to yourself if you were your own toddler. Would you say, okay, fine, whatever, just have the cake, it doesn't matter, the world's on fire anyway? Or would you say, hey, this is why we're going to make this healthier choice for us, and this is why we're going to feel better later? And so I think that being really as simple as that is like, you're kind of like reparenting your inner child in those moments when you
Yes.
are having a struggle. If you think about how would I handle this if this was my toddler? Or another thing that I do is Jenny Lifer yells at me all the time because I do a lot of
Mhm.
negative self-talk. So sometimes I will find myself talking to myself in a way and I'm like, would I ever talk to Jenny like that? I wouldn't even dream of it. Those thoughts wouldn't even cross my mind to ever talk to her in that way. So why do I think it's okay to talk to myself like that? So I
Mhm.
think just imagining yourself as like a toddler when you want to have a tantrum, and that's valid. There's plenty of reasons to tantrum, but there's also plenty of reasons why that's not going to work out well for us in the meantime. So I
Yeah.
like that idea.
Yeah, and a tantrum is a tantrum, but negative self-talk is something completely different. And I know, Matt, you brought that up earlier about, first of all, we have to be good examples and models for our, I hate the word we have to, but we are models for our children, right? So we should be thinking about that a little bit when we're performing that negative self-talk, but also something that you said, Jen, was so true. While we have to take care of our future self, as you said, Jenny, which is a beautiful, beautiful concept, there's also something to be said about taking care of our inner child. And I love the practice. I've seen the practice of like write a letter to your future self, write a letter to you 20, 30 years ago, write a letter to yourself at different stages in your life. How would you want somebody to talk to you? How would you want to talk to other people? What kind of things do you want to talk about? What sort of advice? And then take that advice for yourself. So watching the negative self-talk is important for modeling, but watching the negative self-talk, it's like affirmations. We can use positive affirmations instead of negative self-talk. And we've all heard and read about the power of positive affirmations for mental health. So what we say inside our minds, what we say out loud, even if it's just to ourselves, matters. It really matters and it has an effect on us. And when we're talking about self-care, one thing that I love, and I'm in therapy, I see a therapist weekly, and whenever I'm talking about things, one question she always asks me, and it's almost like I forgot it from a week ago, is, okay, so in all of this that you're going through, what does your self-care look like? And she says that almost on a weekly basis during every session at some point. Wow, that's a lot. So what does your self-care look like during this? And it really helps me to stop and think, well, what have I been doing for myself in this crazy week? What am I doing? So if it's not a therapist, then having that reminder, what does my self-care look like right now while I'm going through this is really important.
Something if I could add on to that is,
Yes.
and I know this word might mean different things to different people, but the idea of manifestation in the sense of, to me,
Hmm.
like I said, I know that word might mean different things to different people and the level of how true it is. But one of the things that we do at my studio in martial arts is we break boards, right? We have pieces of wood and we hit them with our hands and our feet and we try to break them. And one of the problems that students have is when they hit the board, they think, well, it's a piece of wood that's going to hurt. It's not going to break. And then they hesitate. And because they hesitate, it does not break, right? Breaking that piece of wood requires you to drive through it and commit and pump yourself up and go through it. And so, one of the first things that I tell my students is you need to tell yourself it's going to break, right? You need to envision that it's going to break, because when you do that, you're freeing yourself from that barrier in your mind, right? And you're setting yourself up for success. And you mentioned talking like positively to yourself. Not only is that important from a mental health aspect of not beating yourself down, but if you wake up and say, today's going to be a cruddy day, it's going to be a cruddy day. If you
Agreed.
wake up and say, I'm going to be successful in this and this, it still might be a cruddy day. I'm not going to lie to you and say it's going to be a great day, but because you envisioned the possibilities, there's a very good chance that it could happen. And I see that with something as simple as trying to do a punch and break a piece of wood. Envisioning yourself breaking that and going through it sets you up for success. But that applies to other challenges that you have in your life. The way you frame it is going to help you create that outcome that you want. You still might fail, but at least you're going to feel better about it and you have a better chance of achieving it.
Mm.
Boom. I like that.
Yes, absolutely. So, my next question, we sort of touching upon this now, but this is all such great advice. And of course, as we keep mentioning, sometimes we are better at giving advice than following it. I certainly know that I am. I would just love to hear, just to sort of close, any other personal strategies, practices, tips, things that you've been able to implement and stick to in your own life that makes a difference getting you through tough times. Anybody can jump in on this at any time.
I'll go first. Something that I tell my students a lot, and something that I try to do to myself, is to speak truth to myself, in the sense of our brain is a liar, our heart is deceitful. A lot of times, the things that we're feeling are not necessarily true. I was telling my students the other day, the other day I went to send a text message to my wife. I sent her a text message, "Oh, I love you." And I accidentally sent it to the guy that sells me martial arts uniforms, who's like a 50-year-old Korean man. And I sent him, "I love you." And it was embarrassing. It was funny. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm
Maybe he
trying,
needed to hear that
maybe he
that
did. I
day.
don't know. He's a nice guy. I do love him. But I'm driving home from, I was actually down there, I was down in Jersey picking up stuff from him, which is why he was at the top of my text messages. So I'm driving home and I'm going to myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. I'm such a fool. I look so stupid. And then I think to myself, an hour later, this guy is not thinking about the mistake that I made. He's moving on. He's got other problems. He's not thinking about what a dummy Matt Eiler was. He's moving on, and I'm not on his mind. So why am I harping on it so much? Why am I letting it create such strife in my mind and in my heart and create such anxiety? And so what I'm basically doing, what anxiety is, and a lot of times I'm basically lying to myself. I'm working up myself on something that may or not be true. And so, I tell my students to speak truth to yourself. When you are in martial arts class and you mess up a kick, no one's laughing at you. They're going, man, that is a tough kick. I hope I do it too. Or when you make a mistake, they're all going, oh man, he or she is so good at this. Wow, I bet they'll get it next time, right? That's what other people are thinking 99% of the time. And if they're not thinking that, right, if they are thinking, oh, what an idiot, that's on them. That's their problem. They're just being mean. That's not my issue. And so finding that truth and speaking it to yourself, and again, going back to that word, manifest and create the world that you want to live in that sense, can be really, really powerful.
Love that. Love it.
I'll add on to that because I absolutely agree. Being truthful with yourself and noticing the things that you believe that maybe aren't true and are true for yourself, and how that can bring you so much peace when you've really acknowledged what your truth is, trying your hardest, no matter how it turns out, but it feels like you're living in your truth, and that just can bring you so much more peace and calm. And I would also add gratitude practice, whether it doesn't have to be anything too elaborate, but just to coming back into gratitude amidst the really hard stuff, amidst losing people, amidst what appears to be a difficult day. Again, our belief about a day, a belief about who we are, having gratitude that we have the capacity to be alive, like Gwen shared, and just to be here, and the gift of aging, and all of the opportunities that we get to share together, to be here with all of you today. I believe that's truly where healing comes from, to be able to honor those difficult experiences that we have, and then also to be able to find the moments of gratitude amidst that, and moments of joy too, which come along the way. So I think that finding that balance for yourself, and when you can kind of get into that, you really can begin to overall just care for yourself in a whole way.
Beautifully said. Absolutely. Gratitude is so key. Yeah. Gwen, do you have anything to add?
Well, first of all, the gratitude, I couldn't agree more about that. That just being thankful to being alive, being healthy every day. I think for me, what gets me through is understanding my own limitations. So even as an esthetician, there are days that I don't take care of my own skin, of course. And I think if you think about your day and the only thing you can do today, and this kind of goes back to what everyone has said, if you can only hydrate today, that's all you can do today. If you can only sleep today, that's all you can do today. That's one of the things I love so much about getting older, is that we're so much more accepting of our limitations because we have so much more experience, and we are not prone to falling to peer pressure and things like that. You just know your own boundaries. And then, of course, being kind to yourself. I mean, that's probably one of the most foo foo things I've heard in my life, but it is so important to just understand your limitations and just being so kind. I would say that.
Yeah. Self-acceptance and self-kindness for sure.
I'm going to pop
Mhm.
in with my 2 cents before I let you wrap us up, Jenny Leifer. So I will just preface this by saying I don't have good coping skills. I am not a resilient person. I am aware of that. But I have 2 things that I firmly believe in. One is I am unapologetic about the benefits of escapism. I am a reader, And sometimes I'm just like, you know what? This world sucks. And I will go read, maybe counterintuitively, I like to read a lot of horror. That is like that relaxes me. But anyway, again, that's a privilege, right? I know there are people who are like living in war-torn communities and they can't be like, I'm just going to escape for a little while. But if you do have that luxury, give yourself 15 or 20 minutes to just be like, I can't worry about anybody else right now. I can't worry about the horrors of the world. I can't worry about the realities of day-to-day life. I'm going to go read this fantasy novel or whatever it is. And that is okay. You are allowed to do that. Secondly, speaking of reading, I am reading this great book now that is called Your Brain on Altruism. And so kind of building on what everybody's been saying all along about community, it's not just community, it's also generosity in whatever that looks like for you. The only thing that I have ever found in my life that makes me feel better when everything is rotten is doing something nice for somebody else. And not all of us are in a position to give money, but you might be in a position to give time or to give comfort. So she talks about all the scientific evidence that has shown that generosity can have as much benefit on mental health as CBT, which is a cognitive behavioral therapy technique. And it's fascinating. And she even talks about how you can give care, you can receive care, or you can just witness caring if you're not in a position to do either one of those things. And so I very firmly believe in the power of, whether it's volunteering, donating, just in whatever ways you can be generous. Nothing gets me out of my own head like doing something for somebody else. And so I love this book. I'm going to put a link to it on the episode page because I'm kind of obsessed with it right now. And that's it for me.
Love it. Oh, it's so true. So true. So I just want to thank you all. I could continue to put in a few more thoughts and talk for hours. This is a huge topic. And maybe I think that, Jen and I, we talked about having an aging episode at one point. I feel like this is just sort of leading right into that. Self-care is for everybody, not just for those aging, but certainly there are a lot of topics there that self-acceptance, things like that can come with aging as well. So I think we need to have a whole show on that. But I just want to thank you all. This has been such a great conversation. Like I said, I could keep on talking to all of you for another few hours, but if anybody has any last minute thoughts, please chime in. And I just want to, speaking of gratitude, just want to tell you how grateful I am that you could all be here today to talk about this. So thank you all so much.
This was wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys. And thank you to everyone for listening. Please like and subscribe, rate and review, because as we know, it all helps tremendously. Do you love the Valley Girls? Tell a friend. Have ideas for the podcast? Tell us. The easiest way to chat with us is our Facebook group, Valley Girls Podcast Pod Squad, or you can contact us through our website, valleygirlspodcast.com, where you can also sign up for our newsletter so you never miss a thing. And of course, we're on Instagram at valleygirlspodny. We can't wait to hear from you. Oh, and do you love our theme music as much as we do? The music for this episode is by Robert Burke Warren, entitled Painting a Vast Blue Sky, and can be found on his album Redheaded Friend, available on iTunes and Spotify, and at the link in the show notes. Bye for now.